Good morning, everybody. It's Andrew Roberts here from the Great Property Meet with the fantastic David Clouter. And we're here to share with you the brave new world, life after lockdown. David, how are things with you? Are you well this week?
I most certainly am, and I'm looking forward to being able to sort of go a little bit further than the garden. How about you?
Oh, most definitely. I'm looking to get out and have a holiday. I've missed 2 holidays, and I'm looking forward to one very, very much.
What sort of holidays do you think we'll be having this year post-lockdown? Will it be the sort of caravan at Skegness, or will it be a big jumbo jet taking us to the far side of the world, some exotic island?
I think the jumbo jets will be running, personally. I think there is likely to be fewer people jumping on them, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I think people will avoid them, or some people will, which for people like me, that's a positive. However, for people who are a bit more nervous, then they might sit there and say, I'm not getting on an aeroplane in close proximity with others. So the aeroplanes, I think, will be flying half empty or more.
If you think about it, with the aeroplanes, the air is being changed far more than in your average cafe down the street, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, if you're on a half empty plane, provided the plane isn't a full packed budget airline where you're sort of like sardines in the tin, I mean, the seat spacing on them, I'd never run an event with seat spacing like that. You've been to my events, and I like to put almost a chair's gap between each chair so that you can actually put your arms down, your bag at the side of your chair, so you've got leg room, arm room, and you're not squashed in. Personally, I think they're a bit sardine-y, but on the flip side of it, I'm not too worried about any of that. I'm just looking at it and saying to myself, I'll go. It'll be a brave new world out there, and I'm brave.
Well, when
that or foolish, I'm not sure which.
When Roberts Airways takes over from Virgin to fill the gap there, well, I'd like to book a flight. Sounds idyllic.
Well, what I can say is, I believe Virgin Australia went into administration, so there's opportunities there for us, shall we describe?
Well, yeah. That's that. You got a deal, sir. I'm on. I'm in.
We have. So what I'd like to do is kick the day off. And today we've sort of set the agenda as, what are the market reactions going to be post-lockdown? What are the government actions going to be? What could the tax changes be? What policies are likely to change from a government perspective? And will the government repay the money? Have the government actually borrowed the money? Have they printed the money? Is it real money? What's inflation, deflation likely to be like? If you're live, what are your questions? Drop them in the live chat box for me, please. And we will look forward to actually seeing what your questions are. And we will endeavour to answer those when we're just polishing our crystal balls. Are you polishing yours as well, David?
I most certainly am. I'm gazing at them right now, and I can see. I won't tell you what I can see.
Well, yeah. My good luck. But no, seriously now, let's have a look. I mean, the government have taken a lot of actions. Theoretically, about £1 trillion has been pumped into the economy through furlough payments, through CBIL loans, through business Kickstarter loans coming on Monday at 9 a.m. Look out for the video that I'll be releasing this afternoon on that specific subject, how to apply, qualification criteria, etc. I'll be doing a video a day updating you on that criteria. So, David, your views. What do you think
Wow.
is the situation there.
It's an interesting one. I'm about to turn it around and ask you a question that was sort of buzzing through my head now, if that's okay. You've got time to have a sip, and that is this: do we do we spend our way? I mean, I really want to know from somebody who's smart and clued up on this kind of thing. Do we spend our way out of sort of recession, depression, or do we lock down and have an austerity? What works, and is it always the same answer every time? That's the thing that popped into my head as you were talking.
Well, I think that was a really cracking question, because you mentioned the word depression there, and spending our way out of a depression. Now, my personal opinion, looking at this from an accountant, from a business owner, and from a property person's perspective here, I think the economy could, if not handled correctly, tank. And there's a lot of people out there going, chicken licking, the sky is going to fall in. We're headed for a depression, a recession, this, that, the other. Now, we talk ourselves into it and we talk ourselves out of it. If we talk negative, then that negativity creates pessimism amongst other people. If we talk optimistically, then it will also follow through. I'm not saying it's entirely true and you can just be optimistic and the world's great, but we and the press predominantly take the measure of the pulse, and they set the atmosphere and the fear factor. And I follow a gentleman called Chris Voss, very intelligent gentleman. He was an FBI hostage negotiator, and he basically described, go back to caveman times, and there were three types of people. There were those who fought, there were those who ran away. And those two types of people tend to be pessimists. And then there are those who make friends. So at any one time, only a third of the population are optimistic. And when the world around them is being negative, that third also starts to fall into the pessimistic camp. So that's an aside and an analysis. Now, can we spend our way out of this? Well, my personal opinion is we are going to see a budget shortly after lockdown. I personally see a lot more initiatives like the business Kickstart loan. Things where money will be pumped into the economy. And that money pumped into the economy will cause people to spend. Now, we're property investors. If you applied for a 50k Kickstarter loan, what might you do with that? Well, I might refurb a property. Therefore, you're putting money into the economy, which is spending money on VAT. It's creating jobs with, say, B&Q. Other wholesalers exist to sell raw materials. It's the builder's merchant hires people who then go and spend in Tesco's, who then have money. So it creates jobs, creates economy. So it's almost a virtuous circle. If there's money flowing in the economy does well. Now, I will caveat that. We're an island, a very small island, and there are trade winds off our shores. Now, although we can try and protect ourselves, we import a lot, we export a lot. If our exports market dies on its bottom, to say it politely, then what's going to happen is that winds offshore will effectively affect what happens onshore to a small extent. Our exports might not grow as much because America doesn't stimulate its economy, or Europe goes, we're not going to buy from Britain, or Asia doesn't buy from us. So we are not isolated, but we can kickstart what happens here and make our economy flourish to the best of our ability, taking account of those trade winds. Now, will that be a positive thing or a negative thing? Well, if we start spending ourselves out of an economy, and you've got to imagine, I've not stopped. I have been working 7 days a week, and I've been doing some very, very long days during this lockdown because, yeah, I'm feeling it. Early starts, late finishes. But number one, I've been invited to join a lot of meetings such as this one. Number two, because a lot of what I do is consultancy and advice, people have been, for the last 12 months, 2 years, going, oh, I'll get round to it, I've just got to find the paperwork. Well, now that they're in lockdown, they've found the paperwork, and they're going, please, give me the answer now. So there's a sense of urgency. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. And when it's raining, if you've got umbrellas, you sell umbrellas. You don't stop selling umbrellas. If it's sunny and you sell ice creams, you just sell as many ice creams as you can. And you keep going. It's exhausting, but you do it because it might stop raining and I don't have any ice creams to sell. So I'll go and sit on the beach myself and buy ice creams. From that point of view, the economy is going, and I think the economy will trade actively, and we will trade ourselves inwardly out of any depression. And I also think we will be affected to some extent by what's happening offshore. Will we have a depression here? Well, my answer to that would be no. I think there will be certain sectors of the economy that are slower to start than others. Now, if you are in hospitality, for example, restaurants, hotels, serviced accommodation, to bring it into the arena of property investors, I think you're going to struggle. I really think you're going to struggle for at least 6-9 months, which basically pushes us into December. So you've actually missed this trading year. Can you survive 12 months? How robust is your business to survive 12 months with no money? Okay, you can apply for a business Kickstarter loan. Caveat, if you've had a C-bill loan, you can't have a Kickstarter loan. You can have one or the other. Did you know that, David?
I did not. I'm shocked.
You did not. So it sounds like it's a great new initiative, but actually if you've taken one, you can't have the other. Or you can port that one from there to here. So you can only have one loan. So
you can't have your cake
and
eat it. You can't
have your cake and eat it. I've heard a lot of people in serviced accommodation going, oh, you could get all of these, if you've had your business rated for commercial rates, you can get these £10,000 or £25,000 grants. I say, if you read the wording, you have to trade your businesses and operate your business from those premises. Renting out a house, a flat, a room is not trading your business from there. That's like saying each hotel room in a hotel could get it. You have to physically base your business at those premises. So if you have claimed, expect to pay it back. Yeah. Because the rules are reasonably clear on that, in my opinion, and you need to be careful. So that's one of the things I would be looking at. Depression or not depression? Depression is where you tend to have hyperinflation. Could we have hyperinflation? Well, everybody's been in lockdown. I've been refurbishing a site, for example, and I know certain builders merchants have run out of certain materials. Yeah. And that's because materials are not flowing, materials are not being made and stockpiled ready to get into the economy because of social distancing. Therefore, if I need, for argument's sake, plasterboard, Celotex, or popular items that we all use on a refurb, they might not be in stock. So if I was Saint-Gobain and I had a choice over whether to supply my plasterboard to Jewson's, Travis Perkins, Magnet, Heavies, or other builders merchants, I'm going to put my price up because I know whatever I sell, they will buy because they've got none in stock.
Yeah, yeah.
Therefore, because I can dictate the price, that is going to cause inflation. So I would anticipate, if you're planning a refurb, budget for a good 10-15% more on your cost of raw materials, because raw materials are going up and because the support for self-employed hasn't been there, i.e. your builder, he doesn't get any money, any furlough payment or any support for 90 days or until June, when his first payments might start to drop into the account. So his cash flow is going to be absolutely hammered. So he's going to want to claw back as much as he can of that period of time as quick as he can. So he's likely to bunk his rates up. So you're likely to see inflation happening in a number of areas. And then if David wants to go and David works at Tesco's, other supermarkets exist, of course, but he wants to hire a builder to come and do it. All of a sudden, the cost of the materials has gone up and the cost of that's gone up, but has David's wages gone up? So that's going to force employees and unions to put pressure on employers to bump wages up. So I think we will see an inflationary cycle, and the cost of money's low, and the government's borrowed a lot, and inflation's going up. So that will erode the value of the debt that's there. But have the government actually borrowed the money?
Well, we don't know, do we?
Well, let's take a quick look at that one and deep dive. My personal opinion is read the announcement. Businesses can apply to the banks for a furlough payment, and the government will give a guarantee of 80% if you defer on your payment. And that's after the trace due, that's after they've recovered all of your assets and sold your assets. They'll give the bank 80% of whatever the shortfall is. So that's not actually sitting on the government's balance sheet as cash borrowed. Now, I'm being a bit contentious here, so drop your comments in the YouTube chat whether you agree or disagree here. And I know I'm Marmite, and some people will love what I'm saying, some people will hate it, and it's quite contentious. But at the end of the day, that is not cash like in 2008 that came off the government's balance sheet. The government physically printed money, stuck it on their balance sheet, and gave it to the bank. This time they turn around to the banks and say, last year we did a doomsday scenario, we robusted your balance sheet, you've got the funds, go lend it.
Yeah.
And they're making them lend it. And all the bank have, all the government have, is a contingent liability. And that contingent liability is just sitting there, basically, over the next 6 years, possibly 8 by the time you've gone through court processes, seized assets, sold assets, whatever, as a contingent liability. But as people start paying, now the C-bills, you start your repayment either 3 months or 6 months after the initial loan. You can apply for a deferral up to 12 months. Well, what's it actually costing the government? Nothing, because that liability is dovetailing down. I'll try and do it that way, dovetailing down. So the liability is getting smaller as time goes by. Now, the business Kickstarter loan, the government are giving 100% guarantee. But again, what are they doing? They're not actually putting any cash in. Dear Mr. HSBC, NatWest, Barclays, Santander, Nationwide, whoever the bank is, there's lots of them, 40 of them out there lending this money. Go lend it, we'll give you a 100% guarantee if it goes wrong. But they're only lending it to businesses. So the business has to physically go under because effectively the banks have got to charge over your business. Yeah. Therefore, are the government losing any money? No. So they've not printed any of this money. So out of the £1 trillion that I calculate has been pumped into the UK economy, very little of it is actually out of the bank's own pocket. They're very clever. They're very smart.
They are, aren't they?
Now, it is. Now, the other thing, and I've got some trading businesses and some property businesses, and I'll put this one out there. The government were very fearful that everybody's cash flow might dry up. Now, I was speaking to all of my team who have been furloughed in one of my businesses yesterday, and it's a bit contentious, this one. I said to them, how's things? How are you coping? have you got enough money to survive? Now, I'm actually topping up and giving them the extra money so they've got the 100%. So there's actually no wage shortfall for them. And the response that came back was, actually, we've never been so well off. The car, believe it or not, has done 2 months to the gallon. Thought you'd like that one.
That's magic.
I saved about £400 on petrol. So my bank balance is up. I'm not taking my son out to swimming and social events, the cinema. So my cash pot is growing. Because I'm not filling the car up, I'm not stopping and having a Clouter or other coffee brands exist at the petrol station. I don't want anybody to think this is marketing or plugging anybody. By the way, I'm very keen to stay neutral. But this is something where lifestyle habits have been broken. And because they're at home all of the time, apart from going to the supermarket, paying the gas, the electric, the mortgage, their costs have gone down. Their income has stayed the same, or their surplus cash flow has gone up. So contentious again, we might think our cash flows have got worse. And I would challenge any landlord to get out there and rattle the monkeys from the trees of any tenants who are telling you their cash flow's worse off, because you need to assess their cash flow for them. You need to sit down and work out when they're going to repay this money. And I think people are not as badly off as they're making out. And I think there will be a lot of cash, and people will be going out and spending this cash when we come out of lockdown, which further enhances the economy. David, I've been on a soapbox.
I'm with you. I'm with you. This is rock and roll. I'm going to have you on my rock show one week. I think we'll have to do a double on there. I was thinking back to the last time it was the 20s, which was the 1920s. And so, my goodness, were the 1910s pretty horrible, because you had a big old world war, and then you had Spanish flu. And what happened in the roaring 20s? Everybody let their hair down and had a great old party. So you know. Yeah, devil. So I'm very optimistic and upbeat about everything. And after keeping me in the house all this long, we're just going to go out and wave our arms around and do all that sort of stuff as soon as we're able. So,
no, totally.
So yeah, and there's this thing, of course, called behavioural economics, isn't there? Which is a whole science in itself. And very often our behaviours, we are kind of social animals, and we kind of tend to do what we see doing, the Mexican wave or whatever it is, hola. So I think there will be.
For Irma there.
Well, yeah, I think she's watching in there. I think I think that the happy guys who are kind of larking around like us and everything will keep that spark alive, and obviously some people find it terrible to stare at the fireplace every day. I haven't even got one. I took the chimney out, so it's okay. We've got books there instead. So there's plenty to do here. And I've never read so much in my life. Normally they're just there to keep the room warm, but now I'm gingerly pulling them out and see if they fall down and having a whale of a time.
Well, as it happens, believe it or not, this afternoon I collect 2 sets of gallows brackets, and I'm taking 2 chimneys out on site over the next couple of days. So literally, I'm taking the chimney out. Thank you for the plug.
How cool is that? I love taking chimneys out. I haven't done any recently, but I stand on the apex of the roof, astride the roof, and I sort of, because that's something where I kind of I just love it, and I just drop the bricks down the hole. Some poor person at the bottom is all kind of sooty and everything when I finished, but I did that once to a tenant's room. Can you imagine? And not purposely. And this poor guy had a grey layer all over his room after I'd been doing something on the chimney upstairs. So got to be careful. My job as a chimney sweep, I'll leave that to Dick Van Dyke, I think.
Yeah, well, I was going to say chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo. That one. Yeah, that's the one.
That one.
Did it pass the audition for the radio show?
Oh, you're in. You're in. It's
Cam FM Tuesday night. David is The Rock Show.
You're very
I'm
kind.
not sure that's quite rock and roll enough, though, is it?
Well, we do what we can, but at my age, it's kind of the rock and roll Zimmer frame.
You're very good.
So instead of the Harley, I've just got the two Zimmer frame handles, and similar kind of action, similar motion, but
Yeah, so bringing this back on theme then.
Yes.
I mean, I've given you some of my thoughts on inflation, on the government actions that are going to take place. What's your prediction?
Well, see, everything's connected, and now more than ever. And you know, my little hobby is studying all these sine curves and things that are actually asymmetric. But anyway, never mind. And I think we're at a time of unprecedented opportunity, and the smart ones who are first out the starting gate, I think will really kind of excel. So this has been very different from all these cycles that I study, because we're coasting along. It's only so for the Prime Minister to like guillotine the whole of life in a 20-minute television broadcast is not something that kind of happens every day. It probably hasn't happened. Oh, it probably last happened when they were saying and as a result, this country is now at war. The Churchill was saying, So and it's a kind of war, isn't it? It's a kind of war. But after war, usually comes a boom time. Because people are absolutely fed up with my Anderson shelter's quite luxurious here, but nonetheless, I would like to stretch the old legs a bit more than going. I've not only Everest, I've done sort of all of Mont Blanc, all of them going up and down the stairs, since this started. So, it's Captain Tom's birthday today, isn't it?
It is indeed. Many happy returns, Captain. Oh, Colonel Tom. Sorry, Colonel Tom.
So our traditional model with the property cycles has been this 18-year thing, where for 16, I'm probably doing it back to front, but for 16 and a half years, it's doing kind of that. And then for sort of 18 months, it does that. And then it all starts again. But there's an overall long-term trend which is going up. So it's kind of sawtoothing along this sort of long-term trend. But that means that the so-called smart ones can play this, because they know where we are by just reading these very obvious signs, and they build up the cash pot at some time. But we weren't supposed to be doing this now. So the smart, the ones who think they're smart are a bit caught on the hoof now. But it is that pride before the fall comes thing, because in 1988, I think it was, I didn't have a clue what was going on. There's this little boom and bust thing, quite a big one really, because it whacked the whole property market dead flat in places like London for a decade. So I didn't need spreadsheets then. It was all done on the back of a fag packet or something, and you could do all your calculations, and you could go in there and make an offer on a property, blah, blah, blah. You didn't need to think about it. And wow, it was scary come about 1999 when it started doing that again, because I'd forgotten how to do sums. It took a bit of a battering the old brain there. But
in 1988, David, Excel didn't exist.
Like it. So I did a bit of reading then after. You crack me up. It's whoa, live is just such a different experience to our wonderful Saturday morning things about the
absolutely. And don't forget to tune in this Saturday, because we're time traveling.
It's a bit of a scary one. I was hiding under the table, I tell you. So and I had my Intrepid Explorer hat, like sort of Harrison Ford or something. So But yeah, so this time around, it's not the same as it's been, although I suspect maybe it's the same as it was in the 20s. And the person to ask about that, although he's no longer with us, but he wrote some super books. Have you ever read any John Kenneth Galbraith? You probably have.
I've heard of him, but I've not read them, no.
Super book, right? Obviously, I get a commission from Amazon, but other booksellers are available. The Crash of 29, and all these train wreck things, they all have a different cause, but then they all tend to kind of play out kind of similarly, because governments are thinking, oh my goodness, we don't want a sort of extremist rabble rouser standing on a soapbox and doing that, you see. So they kind of talk it down, And that's exactly what happened, in the early 1930s. And there were, things are pretty rough then, actually, to be honest, post 1929. But by keeping a steady hand on the tiller and saying, well, so everything's okay, it sort of went away. And I think that's what we need to be looking at here, coming back to kind of what you're saying earlier. I didn't realize that there are 2/3 of the people are miserable old grumps. So we're a kind of rather unique combo here.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's interesting that I do an awful lot of reading on stuff like that, because as you know, I do negotiation skills stuff, and to be able to negotiate, you actually need to understand people, and there's lots of different tools out there, and I've probably come across most of them, read them, analysed them, and the thing is, you can't just use one tool to stereotype people. There's lots of different tools because we're complex. I mean, if I said David was an optimist, there's probably days when he has an off day, so he has an element of pessimism in him, and it's a bit. I've forgotten the name of that chart where you have the three rings and they overlap. It's not Gantt. Venn diagram, yeah. It's like a Venn diagram. We have a little bit of everything in us, but we might have a leaning towards one thing opposed to something else. So I'm getting a bit less than 2 meters on you there, David. I hope you don't mind.
I like it. So,
but no, I mean, let's have a look at this then. The market reactions, stock market. How do you think they are going to react? I mean, at the moment, the market tanked, then it started to bounce back. Some stocks have stayed down, McDonald's, Hilton, and hospitality, leisure type stocks. Some stocks are booming, like Barclays, up 30%. What's your predictions for this year?
Wow.
And
why? Wow. Just a little throwaway question. you can brew yourself a kettle now. I'm gonna come back in 10 minutes. It's difficult to predict which sectors will boom and which sectors will bust, and I think that or will not do quite so well, because that all depends on what kind of world we sort of emerge into. We might all be kind of blind, like moles. They're the ones, aren't they? And kind of, oh my goodness, sunlight. Oh, get back inside. And certainly there will be sectors which have taken a hammering, which will take a while to recover. Interesting about the banking sector. I mean, I was always a very staunch guy for going in the bank with my pile of doubloons and yo ho ho sliding them across the counter and all that. And I've been doing this online stuff, and it ain't half quicker.
Yeah, well, sectors are going to change, and I think perhaps one of the reasons that banking stocks might be up is we all need banks, and banks only make money when they lend it. So if you're putting your doubloons over the counter, the bank are losing money because they're paying you. They therefore have to find as quick as possible somebody who wants your doubloons and give it to them, whilst keeping an element of it on their balance sheet for reserves.
Hey, where's my doubloons?
So, yeah. So therefore, because rates are low, people are going to tend to borrow more money. As a result, banks are therefore going to lend more money, so they'll have less actually in their safe. So the markets are going, well, that's a positive. Because of changes in behaviour, i.e. David now not going to pay his doubloons over the counter, but actually going, this internet thingy, it's much better. I'm going to do my internet banking. It's quicker. I social distance from the teller, and I don't bump into all these people in the queue. There you go. Other calculators do exist. And what we're going to find is retail banking spaces being sold off. So there's then another flip side that puts cash onto their balance sheet, potentially if they own it. If they lease it, they're going to stop leasing it. The landlord's going to go, woe is me, what do I do with these premises? So we're going to have a look at all of these things and look at how that impacts the share price, because if they're selling off the real estate or ditching the lease, that's lightening up their cost. And one of the things that banks work on is cost to income ratios and various ratios about their cost versus interest versus margin. So cost is really key. Now, if they're getting rid of their real estate, and we all know, because this is our industry, what it costs to buy, to hold, to operate a building, maintain it, and banks don't tend to go cheap. They tend to go overboard on things like air conditioning, health and safety, security, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be a plethora. So these stores that the banks own are going to come up for sale. And I would predict about 3,000 to 5,000 buildings coming up for sale over the next 2 years. Now, that cash is then going to need to be lent out quickly to David.
But of course, to buy those buildings. So let's keep the money going round.
Absolutely. So they lend it back to you to buy their own building. How ironic is that?
That's fabulous.
Now, it's a good point there. But then you look at hospitality sector, they've got these great buildings, which at best of times, they're getting 70% occupancy. So 30% of it is vacant. This year, do you think they're going to hit their 70% occupancy ratios on a typical month? I think they're going to struggle.
Yeah.
And I think that sector will struggle. And what we might see is amalgamation, mergers, takeovers, hostile bids for large hotel groups. And what they're doing is the predators are effectively buying the brand. They're buying it cheap while the assets are cheap, taking advantage of the fact that they know next year everybody will have forgotten about Corona and whatever else. What was the beer we were drinking last night? That's about as much of a memory as it will be. We were just having a Corona beer. We'll have all forgotten. Remember SARS, swine flu, and all the other epidemics we've had? We tend to get one every year or two that go around the world, and I remember them, and I've had members of my team who had swine flu, and it was supposed to be the worst thing ever. And I'm not trying to lighten up that COVID-19 is not a very serious pandemic going across the world, but there will be another one next year, the year after, the year after. It'll be something different. It may not be as life-threatening as this one is, or as virulent as this one has been.
Yeah.
But they will happen. You know, we've had bird flu. That was another. They come every year or two.
They do with various varying degrees of severity. So, but you're absolutely right. It's only when we're right in the middle of one that they bring out of the box all the other ones. Well, how does it compare to that one? I go, which one? What's that? You know, I remember them spraying the wheels of coaches with something. That was something to do with cows, wasn't it? I think. But this was about 20 years ago, something like that. And I was coming into Victoria coach station in my multi-wheeled big limousine thing, and they started spraying the wheels, and everybody's going, woo!
Yeah, well, I remember I have trading businesses, as you well know, David, and some of my suppliers are on the continent. So I go over to Europe on business. I drive there, and 6-9 months, I remember, I think that was foot and mouth, wasn't it, at the time?
Yes.
And
yes,
I remember driving my vehicle through the Eurotunnel exit to the country, and other means of exiting the country do exist, by the way. But as I drove through, the vehicle had to go effectively through a wash, where the underside of the vehicle went through a disinfectant bath, and that, cleansed or neutralized whatever. In the same way, we wash our hands with soap and water, and COVID-19 little bubbles drop off, and they all fall to the floor.
They do.
So each one's different, and it's good. So we've looked at market reactions, and we predict the market will grow in some sectors, contract in others, and there will be some predators in the market. So that we've looked at. Government actions, David.
Yeah.
What are your predictions that the government will act upon?
It's interesting. I mean, they will be obsessively, first of all, watching these infection numbers every single day, whether they're going and doing it on a podium or sort of in the Cobra room or something. They'll be having a look at all this stuff, and that'll keep them busy for the next year for sure. But how will it affect kind of legislation moving forwards? Because that COVID bill was quite draconian, wasn't it, really? Once you give governments a bit of power, they say, oh, actually, we quite like this. And there's this fellow in Hungary. He's the Prime Minister of Hungary. I don't know if you've heard about this, but he's abolished the elections indefinitely and granted himself absolute power indefinitely. He's granted himself a sort of indefinite martial law until he feels like easing off. So I'm glad we don't live in a country like that. But
that sort of sounds like some African countries or European countries going back some period of time. That sounds.
It's a bit feudal. It's a bit medieval, isn't it? This kind of thing. But his party voted for that, and now they're all furloughed, I guess, and they probably didn't think of the implications.
They can't change the policy until they come off furlough, should we come off furlough? Let's...
why can't policemen give you a clip round the ear anymore, because like they used to do in my old day, because if you're out and about on the streets and you shouldn't be, they should just put their gloves on and whoosh.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, what do you think might happen, planning policy-wise? Migration. What are your thoughts? How do you think the government are going to react to this lockdown?
The question is, will they be leading or following, really? I think because this is a situation where we very, very much, all of us are kind of responding to events day to day. With this lockdown thing, people are just saying, oh, to hell with it and going out. So kind of, again, it's not something the government is just kind of really, watching from a distance. And there was all this stuff in the middle of March about you must have a lockdown, you must have a lockdown, you must have a lockdown. It's not safe out there. And now there's all this thing of let us out. And so poor old government is stuck in the middle, really. And I think I suspect they may follow for a bit rather than lead and sort of, go with the flow. But they do realise that it's not a vote winner if we all keel over. So I do think that they will be, having our safety kind of quite high up in their minds.
I would. I'll challenge you on that and raise the stakes. And if you're watching this live on YouTube, comment. Who do you believe, David or me, on this one? Yeah, I do agree with the fact that there was a little bit of chastisement because COVID-19, do you, don't you lockdown, and then do you, don't you release, and you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So there's no right or wrong decision. But I think the government are going to lead, and they're going to be very proactive and very fast when we lift the lockdown. And my interpretation, based on data and evidence that I'm seeing, is the lockdown will be being lifted in a phased sort of manner, probably within 10 to 14 days, which sounds quick. Now, why do I think it will be that quick? Number one, business Kickstarter loans start on Monday. Cash lands in your bank account on Tuesday. You're the business owner. You want to get out there and spend that and start driving your business. Hang on, but we're in lockdown for another 6 weeks. Why are they going to encourage the cash to get into the economy that quick when they could go through a slower lending process, more due diligence, blah, blah, blah? So you have to look at that as one of the factors. You have to look at the numbers which are in decline. I'm not saying they've gone, but they're in decline. And listen to health professionals who are being briefed on how to prepare for a release of a population and how to change NHS structures. And you are good friends with a medic there, David.
Yeah, absolutely. My good friend, Dr. Mike.
I think the government will certainly be doing a budget, either pre-release of lockdown or the day after lockdown is lifted. And that will be full of action, stimuli for the economy to get everybody running around, excited, spending money, taking action, seeing opportunities. Or while I've been sat in lockdown, I've been cogitating and I've got this great business idea and I'm going to do it when I get out of lockdown. And people are going to come out with passion, with energy, with drive, and they want to encourage that and support it. I think you will see changes in planning bills where permitted development rights, they're going to increase permitted development rights to stimulate the building sector, the property sector, to stimulate landlords to do things because, landlords have taken a kick in. And if we go back to the very first announcement that Rishi made about tenants can take a payment holiday. It's not a holiday, if you're listening, it's a deferral, and it's contingent on landlord agreement and agreeing how any shortfall will be repaid within the window. So that's one of the announcements he made. And he said he wanted no renter to be financially disadvantaged. He then finished his statement, and I can't remember the exact wording, but it was words to the effect of, and we wouldn't wish landlords to be too adversely affected.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute.
Well,
it's effectively implying you're going to take some pain. Therefore, because you've taken some pain, there is likely to be some trade-off, and the trade-off will be along the lines of, right, we're going to release some property rules to make it easier for you to extend your building backwards, add extra floors on, go down. There will be a loosening of planning policies.
Yeah, sui generis under PD. How about that?
Yeah, and if you've been land banking or property banking with opportunities, this is now your moment. You've got these Kickstarter loans up to £50,000. Now, the £50,000 is capped as maximum 25% of your turnover. Now, that's a fairly decent amount of money to get into your bank. And I've been listening to a lot of property investors going, great, I'm going to get one of them 50s and then I'm going to go and use it as a deposit. Let's flip this into the banking sector for a moment. David is a bank. David, will you lend me a 70% mortgage?
Well, of course.
And I've got this £50,000 deposit here that was a loan from you as well.
Great.
What are you going to say, David?
I'm just going to say I'm not exposed at all. What a great...
You're going to say, great, I can see the £50,000 has come from a deposit or from a loan. Therefore, although I was going to lend you 70%, I'll actually take the 50 grand off and lend you 50 grand less, because that money is a loan and you've got no skin in the game. Therefore, I'm not going to lend you the same loan to value as you might have wanted if it was your own money, because you've got 100% debt in there. So me, the bank, is at risk. I don't like being at risk. So the Kickstarter loans are good. Word of advice, don't expect to use them as deposits. If you do, you need to think how you're going to use them as deposits.
Because whenever there's a market where, I mean, do you think we'll ever see the days of, 110% loan to value and that kind of thing again, or is that gone forever? Or do these things go in cycles? Because when I started out, 30 grand flat, well, here's 35. Buy yourself some furniture. And
I think the biggest I ever saw was 125% loan to values, and they were professional starter loans. And I was offered one because I was a trainee accountant, and it was perceived that as I'm training to be a professional, my income will go up like that, like a rocket. Therefore, I will be able to afford this in a few months, years' time, and therefore the payments would also ramp over time. Didn't take that product because I didn't want to overgear. Will we get back to 110% mortgages, like David asked the question? No. Why not? Basel funding formula.
Oh, yeah, but
basically, the banks have to put £1 in reserves for each, well, depending on the loan to value, they have to put £1 in reserves. And the higher the loan to value, the more reserves they have to set aside. The more loans they have that are in default, the more reserves they need to put aside on their balance sheet. Therefore, if they're putting reserves aside on their balance sheet, they can't lend it. If they do 100% mortgage, they have to put £1, exactly £1 for every pound they lend on their balance sheet as a reserve. If they do 110%, I think the criterion is they have to put £1.25 for every pound they lend. Therefore, why would they lend 110%? Until the formula changes, they're not going to change it.
Yeah. I think that was my question. Will the rules ease up a bit? I mean, clearly a bank's job is to lend money, isn't it?
No, I don't think the rules will ease up. And I think we're going to have 12 months, as David said earlier, where the garden is rosy, we're flourishing, and things are going brilliantly. The opportunities around us will be phenomenal. And the smart person with cash reserves will seize those opportunities and thrive on them. In 12 months' time, I think things will start to get a little bit wobbly, 12 to 18 months. The reason it'll get a bit wobbly, the banks have lent out a phenomenal amount of money. If everybody, Kickstarter loans, your first repayment starts month 13. T-bills loans, if you've deferred to the maximum period, which is 12 months, your first payment starts in month 13. You'll then have your VAT payment that you've deferred cropping up. You'll have your income tax payments cropping up. So people, let's put it like this. I look at people's habits. If there's £1 in the bank, hey, I got £1, let's go spend it.
Especially if it's Friday.
Yeah, and the cash will have gone. And all of a sudden, people start hitting the buffers, and you'll start to see businesses tipping over that have not cash flowed themselves well enough. The banks are going to start to see a little bit of arrears creeping in. It won't affect the government's balance sheet, mind, because until the loan actually goes bust, and until they've done the recovery procedure, it doesn't hit the government. So it's probably early failures that go into administration, assets sold, blah, blah, blah. If there is a shortfall, that money won't fall on the government's balance sheet until at least 2 to 3 years' time.
How about that? After the next election, whatever.
Ta-da!
Well, I couldn't possibly comment. So are there things like good debt and bad debt, would you say, or is that just a sort of hackneyed old cliche?
Yes, there is. I mean, if I was borrowing money to go and buy a new shirt, the shirt's worthless once I've bought it. I could perhaps stick it on eBay and get 50p. I might be able to give it to a charity shop that might be able to get £1. But if I don't pay that off at the end of the month, then that is bad debt, because I'm paying interest on something that's worthless. If I've bought my groceries on credit card, I've eaten them, consumed them, they're worthless. Nobody else can make anything from it.
Hopefully not.
But if you are investing in assets such as property, and I say this genuinely, if you invest in property, and as I've sort of indicated, there might be a little bit of inflation coming, inflation's going like that. You've locked in an asset price at your acquisition, but the asset value's going up. The debt in real terms is going down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is good debt and bad debt in that sense. That's how I would coin it and frame it.
So,
but not too much debt, because if you're over-geared and over-leveraged, that isn't good stuff. Because over-geared and over-leveraged, they are going to be the first people that fall over. And to coin that phrase that we've used from a good friend of ours, if we're both in the woods and we're being chased, I only have to outrun David to beat the bear, and I can survive it in a downturn.
Yeah, that wouldn't be difficult with my Zimmer frame. You know, that would be a doddle, absolute, an absolute pushover. So yeah, I mean, you know, certainly for us in property, borrowing money is a very useful tool that we do, because we're not all born with six figures in our bank account. Some are, but you know, that they've gone to Canada now, or no, West Coast of America, isn't it? You know, it's a good way when we're sort of energetic, strapping young lads like us. It's a good way to get started, isn't it? Really, and you can, well, yeah. How about that? This is crazy, aren't we? So you know, I'm a fan of gearing, but I'm not a fan, as you say, of over gearing. I think you have to have very sensible balances, and sometimes I just go, I really get this bee in my bonnet, and I just aggressively pay down mortgages. And you know, my record is about 2 or 3 years or something for paying one off. But you have to sort of put the kitchen sink in it. It probably doesn't quite work in today's prices. But yeah, I know. But I mean, I was talking to a very good friend yesterday. He was telling me that the sort of 3-bed Victorian terrace up his way about 70 grand. So I thought, you know, he sent me the postcode, so I'll have to have a look. It wasn't Kensington, Chelsea.
Well, it obviously wouldn't be. Here's a question for you. Will the government repay money? Now I'm sort of picking questions that are coming in off YouTube. So if you've got questions, obviously post them there. Have we got money to repay? Will this money that's been paid out in furlough be repaid, David? If so, how?
That's a very, very good question. If we know this, if we've been on this property cycles talk, and we know how money comes from, we know about fractional reserve banking, and we know about quantitative easing, and it's all just a game, isn't it? Really, it's monopoly.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the short answer. That's the short answer.
Yeah. Well, my 10 pence is, I don't think it will be.
No.
Because if you look, did we repay the money back in 2008 that was written at that time?
Yeah.
Because if we did repay the money, it would put our exchange rate out of balance with the rest of the world. And you only have to monitor exchange rates when this money was written. What you saw was like a Mexican wave going around different currencies. One currency announced they were printing money, their exchange rate fell through the floor. And then when the next one wrote new money, theirs came back up into parity. So if we were paying down, our exchange rates would all start to fluctuate again. And why would a government want to cancel money that they've printed? Because effectively what they've done is deflated the pound.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Therefore, they've deflated their debt. So, you know, from that point of view, I don't think they will repay money. I think it will remain on our balance sheet unless Europe, America, other nations do exist, start going, right, we're going to pay down what we printed. But if they start paying it down, that's taking money out of supply. If you take money out of supply, there's less activity. It's got to be paid for from somewhere, generally taxation, which means tax bills go up, which therefore pushes money down in supply further still, because people are going, oh, woe is me, I can't go to the cinema, I can't have my latte of a morning on the way into the office. So the whole economy starts to slow, and if the economy starts to slow, therefore they all fall off a cliff. And if they all fall off a cliff, what happens then?
Well,
they don't go anywhere. we go into a global recession or depression. So I don't think they will. I mean, a questioner's coming on social media here about tax changes. Do you predict there'll be any tax changes? National insurance, VAT, corporation tax, stamp duty, income tax?
I don't think some people have been saying this, but I don't think, for example, which would be nice, I don't think we're going to get a stamp duty holiday in the autumn. But you know, it's just wishful thinking. I don't think we're going to see corporation tax at 15%, but you never know. You never know. If somebody important is listening, that's my tip as to what they should do. But I mean, like the chances, like a snowball's chance in hell. So we'll be kind of keeping a steady hand on the tiller, I suppose, because you know we're treading this delicate line between the very fine line between sort of boom and bust in times like now, and you've got to be a very good driver to get it over the line and to keep the economy moving forward. You know, I think that's going to be the key to it. It's going to be striking that balance and getting it right that it's going to determine really where we are in 6 months' time and the conversation we'll be having then.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you, David. I don't think there will be any big tax raises for the first 12 months.
Yeah, because it would kill everything.
Every pound has got to go into the economy. Every pound has got to go in. The more we spend, the more the exchequer will get back in things like VAT anyway.
Yeah.
The more we spend, the more jobs are created. Therefore, PAYE and national insurance comes in. The more you raise taxes, the more people are disincentivized to actually undertake commercial and economic activity. And if we start raising taxes like corporation tax, businesses that are global and have based themselves here will go, we're moving to a cheaper tax domicile. If other territories raise their tax rate, it's good for us because it will import businesses. So I think tax rates will stay low and will be monitored over 12 months. And in 12 months' time, there will be some tweaking of tax rate. Some of it will go up on the pretense that actually what we're trying to do is raise a bit of revenue to pay back to the NHS, to pay back this, that, the other. And I think those will be done under the pretense of that, but it'll just be building a war chest for the next scenario that hits us.
See,
would be my prediction.
Yeah, apropos of the government, you know, like balancing the books. When the government is running a deficit, well, who's got that money? Where is it? You know, and so you know, at the moment we need to feel good, and that's one great way. And you know, so it would just kill everything stone dead if they raised tax rates and things like this. Right now they can't. But yeah, they'll monitor it. They'll be monitoring all kinds of stuff. They'll be having a lot of graphs and charts and things, and looking at all the moving averages and all that stuff, weren't they? And then standing on some podium somewhere and talking about it in lay terms, which obscure the real kind of message.
Well, what I would say is we'd aimed an hour. We're an hour and 4 minutes, David.
Oh my Lord, wow.
What we're going to do, we'll pick this up again next week, and we'll be doing a different topic. Join us on Saturday when we're time traveling, and drop your comments below on this video, and what questions do you want answering in our next debate that we have, because what we're doing is sharing our ideas. We're testing ourselves against the great economists of society and working out whether we should, whether we're as good as, better than, worse than, complete load of bunkum. But it's great that you've joined us once again here. And David, what would you like to say on the wrap?
Well, I just think that, you know, every show needs a comedian and a genius. And this one's got it, hasn't it? So there you go. The secret sauce.
Thank you for being the genius today.
It's been a real pleasure, Andrew. You have a super week. I'm a bit scared about Saturday, but you know, I'll be sort of taking my tranquilizers, I think, or maybe a tranquilizer dart gun. That might help. Yeah,
well, I'm hiding behind the sofa.
Wow.
I am, and I've got my blanket with me as well, because.
Do you mean, I don't want to give anything away, but hiding behind the sofa, do you mean there were going to be Daleks there? We'll have to do that one week.
Ooh, there could be something there. Could be something for us. Really great that you've joined us today. I hope it's been of use to you. I hope it's given you some predictions and forecasts, some very controversial stuff that we've said. Will it come true? Will the government be that controversial, or are we just talking bunkum?
Well, here's the thing. If it does come true, in 6 months' time, we'll be saying, as we said 6 months ago. If it doesn't, we'll be kind of talking about something else.
Yeah, and we'll be linking back to this video showing just how good our crystal ball was that we were polishing earlier.
Have a good one, everybody.
All the best. Thank you, everyone. Ciao.